The narrator's grandfather found a tiger cub in the forest. He named it Timothy and raised it. However, when it grew up and became menacing, he handed it over to the zoo. Once, he went there to meet Timothy. Let's read the story and learn about his meeting with Timothy. Once grandfather went on a hunting expedition in the Terai jungle. Though he was not a great hunter yet, as he knew the forests of the Shivalik hills better than any other people, he was requested to accompany the party to advise them on the terrain and the direction the hunters should take as soon as a tiger was spotted. The party reached the camp in the jungle. There were about 15 elephants for the hunters. The sportsmen had never seen a tiger, nor did they shoot anything else, though they had seen a number of deer, peacocks, and wild boars. They were giving up all hopes of finding any tiger and were planning to shoot at jackals, when grandfather, while strolling down the forest at some distance from the rest of the party, found a tiger cub about 18 inches long, hiding among the roots of a banyan tree. Grandfather picked him up and brought home. He had the distinction of being the only member of the party to have begged any, dead or alive, the tiger cub that was named Timothy by grandmother was brought up entirely on milk given to him in a feeding bottle, but the milk proved too rich for him, and after some days he was put on a diet of mutton, followed by a more tempting diet of pigeons and rabbits. Timothy was provided with 2 companions, Toto, the monkey, who was bold enough to pull the young tiger by the tail and then climb up the curtains if Timothy lost his temper, and a small mongrel puppy. At first, Timothy appeared to be quite afraid of the puppy and darted back with a spring if it came too near. He would make absurd dashes at it with his large forepaws and then retreat to a safe distance. Finally, he allowed the puppy to crawl on his back and rest there. One of Timothy's favorite amusements was to stalk anyone who would play with him. When I came to live with grandfather, I too became one of his favorites. With a crafty look in his glittering eyes and body crouching, he would creep closer and closer to me, suddenly making a dash for my feet, rolling over on his back, and kicking with delight and pretending to bite my ankles. Timothy was by this time a full-grown cub. When I used to take him out for a walk, people would move to the other side. When he pulled on his chain, I had difficulty in keeping up with him. The drawing room was his favorite place in the house. He would make himself comfortable on the long sofa, reclining there with great dignity and snarling at anybody who tried to get him off. Timothy had clean habits and would scrub his face with his paws, exactly like a cat. He used to sleep in the cook's quarters and was always delighted at being let out in the morning. When Timothy became 4 years old, a change came into him. He grew steadily less friendly to others. When out for a walk with me, he would try to steal away to stalk a rat or someone's pet dog. Sometimes at night, we would hear frenzied cackling from the poultry farm, and in the morning there would be found feathers all over the veranda. So, Timothy had to be chained up more often. Watching his habits, grandfather decided that it was time to transfer him to a zoo. The nearest zoo was at Lucknow, 200 miles away. Grandfather took him to Lucknow, where the zoo authorities were too glad to receive a well-fed and fairly civilized tiger as a gift. About 6 months later, when my grandparents were visiting relatives in Lucknow, the grandfather took the opportunity of calling at the zoo to know how Timothy was getting on. On reaching at the zoo, grandfather made straight to the particular cage in which Timothy had been interned. The full-grown tiger was there crouched in a corner with a magnificent striped coat. "Hello, Timothy," said grandfather. Climbing the railing with ease, he put his arm through the bars of the cage. The tiger approached the bars and allowed grandfather to put both hands around his head. Grandfather stroked the tiger's forehead and tickled his ears. Whenever he growled, grandfather smacked him. It licked grandfather's hands and sprang away when a leopard in the next cage snarled at him. Grandfather shooed the leopard and the tiger returned to lick his hands. But every now and then the leopard would rush at the bars and he had to slink back to his corner. By this time, a number of people had gathered to watch the reunion of the tiger and grandfather. The zookeeper pushed his way through the crowd and asked grandfather what he was doing. "I'm talking to Timothy," answered grandfather. "Weren't you here when I gave him to the zoo 6 months ago?" "I haven't been here for long," replied the zookeeper. "Please, you go with your conversation. I have never been able to touch him myself. He is always bad-tempered with me. Why don't you put him somewhere else?" suggested grandfather. "That leopard keeps him frightening." "I'll go and tell the superintendent about it." Grandfather went in search of the superintendent, but could not make it. So after wandering about the zoo for a little while, he returned to Timothy's cage to say goodbye. It was about evening. He took to stroking and slapping Timothy for about 5 minutes when he saw another keeper observing him from a little distance. Grandfather recognized him as the keeper who had been